Good morning. Good morning from the Bullitt County Historical Society and also from the Hideway on Savannah Avenue. Today's tidbit is brought to you by Whitfield Signs, the David A. Ball Family Foundation, and Ag South Farm Credit. These are great community players and personal friends of mine. Thank you. There are really numerous forts within a day's drive from Statesboro. We really don't think about this, but we were part of the original 13 colonies, and we needed forts to defend ourselves from the Spanish, the French, the Native Americans who were here first and we took their land, etc., etc. There are two forts very near Statesboro that have both played an important part of Georgia's rich history. They are Fort Pulaski and Fort Scrive. Both are located on what was once Savannah Beach, Georgia. Now we call it Tybee Island. Here is a great aerial view of Fort Pulaski, which shows the brick wall, moat, and those wonderful arches. In the 18th century, the island held Fort George, used mainly to defend against privateers. Yep, we had pirates on the Georgia coast. And then it was called Fort Greene, used for quarantine and customs for inspecting slave trading ships. Today we're going to talk about Fort Pulaski. It's actually on Cockspur Island, which is between Savannah and Tybee. Here is a beautiful oil painting of the Cockspur Island Lighthouse that's in the collection of me and Bill here at the Hideway. I love this painting. After the War of 1812, United States President James Madison ordered a new system of coastal fortifications to be built. Construction of Fort Pulaski began in 1829 under the direction of Major General Babcock. Later, a second lieutenant named Robert E. Lee, who had recently graduated from West Point, took over this project. This young engineer, lieutenant, located the site for the fort, and Robert E. Lee supervised the construction of the drainage canals and the dikes. In 1831, he left this project and was assigned to military work in Virginia. He would not visit this fort again for at least 20 years. He did visit again during the Civil War. In 1833, the facility was named Fort Pulaski in honor of Casimir Pulaski. Here is a picture of this Polish soldier that fought under the command of George Washington during the American Revolution. Pulaski was a noted cavalryman with a great leader, and he took part of sieges in both Charleston and Savannah during the Revolution. Fort Pulaski belongs to what is known as the third system of coastal fortifications. These had great structural durability. Most of these built after 1816 still exist along the Atlantic coast and the Gulf Coast of the United States. Wooden pilings were sunk up to 70 feet into the mud to support an estimated 15 million bricks. Look at the bricks in this great postcard showing the arched passageways at Fort Pulaski. Note the grooves in the brick floors. Fort Pulaski was finally completed in 1847. It took 18 years to construct it and nearly $1 million in construction costs. Construction was lengthy due to the fact that yellow fever, typhoid, and dysentery halted construction each summer. Bet these men would have loved to have gotten a vaccine. Just saying. Fort Pulaski was thought to be impregnable. It was inaccessible to ground offense and believed to be too far away from enemy battery sites. The pentagonal fort had brick walls 7.5 feet thick and 25 feet above the waterline. The entire fort was surrounded by a 48-foot wide moat. When the Civil War began right up the road in Charleston at Fort Sumter, Georgia Governor Joseph E. Brown ordered the state militia to take control of the fort. A side-wheel steamer named Ida, carrying 110 men from Savannah, traveled down the Savannah River and seized the fort from the American government. Actually, the caretaker of the fort immediately surrendered and gave the rusting guns and small supply of powder and ammunition to the would-be very soon Confederates. That's really kind of hard to understand. 12 days later, in February 1861, when Georgia joined the Confederate States of America, the Confederate troops moved into the fort. I just wonder, were some of those there that were Georgians, one day were they soldiers for the United States Army, and the next day they were soldiers for the Confederate Army? So, the Ida then visited almost daily to Fort Pulaski, towing barges filled with lumber, arms, gunpowder, and food. About a year later, Tybee Island was thought to be too isolated for conflict, so it was abandoned by the Confederate forces. This allowed Union troops to gain a foothold across the Savannah River from Fort Pulaski. And we must remember, Savannah was a very important port to the Confederacy. In April of 1862, Union troops, using 36 guns, including the James rifled cannon and Parrott rifles, began a long bombardment of the fort. The rifle projections could be accurately fired farther than smooth cannonballs. Within 30 hours, the new type cannon, the rifled, had breached one of the fort's corner walls and was dangerously close to the main powder magazine. The colonel, Charles Olmsted, surrendered the fort with no casualties on either side. I'm so glad he did, because the bombardment would have continued, the magazine would have exploded, and it would have been a total loss of Confederate soldiers, and I'm sure Union soldiers as well. Look at this postcard, which shows the battle scars from the rifled cannons. Due to the rifle projectiles, construction of brick and stone fortifications became obsolete. Now you know the rest of the story. During the last of the Civil War, Fort Pulaski was used for a prison for captured Confederate officers, known as the Immortal 600. It housed the Confederate Secretary of State, Secretary of the Treasury, Secretary of War, Assistant Secretary of War, 3 Confederate governors, a senator, and other prominent men. You get the picture. In 1933, the fort was transferred from the War Department to the National Park Service. Repairs were then started, and members of the Civilian Conservation Corps, known as the CCC, arrived on Cockspur Island and began rehabilitation of the fort. Let's take a field trip to Fort Pulaski. Want to go? Thanks for sharing with me today. Bye.